It's really rewarding to know that we can actually clean up a site and not spray. My name is Colin Arnold and I run Grazeway, which is a company where we hire goats, and so we use goats instead of using herbicide. We found it very successful in actually killing those problematic weeds that usually require quite a lot of chemical. Right now we're standing in Abbey Walk, which is an open space parkland in Vermont, and we have a site here where it's been fenced off. It was filled with willows and a lot of other problematic weeds, ivy, long grass. We put some goats in and we've really transformed that site from being overrun with woody weeds, including blackberry, to a site that's got a real heavy dominance now of native grasses. Increasingly these days the goats will actually weed out the weeds amongst the native grasses that we planted. They'll eat the problematic weeds like blackberries. Horses, sheep, cows won't eat blackberries, but goats really target blackberries and ivy and dock and many other weeds that we have on these sites. I know how much chemical goes onto sites. I know the variety of chemicals for the variety of weeds. I know the risk it is to people, the people that are applying it. We have no waste, we have no empty containers, we have no gloves to dispose of, we have no disposable overalls or gumboots or masks that need to be thrown away. It's just an animal. It does what it normally naturally does. Anywhere else, we just use that ability to graze and to browse, and we use it to control sites that are important habitat. We can restore them, or not restore them fully, but get them back to a much better site, much more environmental site, without damaging it with herbicide. It's sustainable, it's very green. People love it, there's enormous PR advantages, and so I enjoy that, and I think that is the future. Your first step is to graze it and to get on top of the weeds.
Yes.
Your second step is to then plant into that your native things like your grasses, your lomandra, your juncus, all the sedges, so that they bind the soil, they protect the soil.
Yes.
And then once you've got those well and truly entrenched and growing and nicely happening, then you would go to as close as possible areas where you've got intact soil full of fungi and all of the things that should be there. You bring some of that soil, not much, just a little bit, like handfuls of it, and you inoculate the soil.
And away it goes.
And that fungi then has the right environment, a much better environment. So that will have an enormous impact on the trees, the health of the eucalypts, the health of the wattles, the health of everything.
And that would really, as far as the native side of things go, maximise its carbon capture potential.
So I mean this is just typical urban creek, wonderful habitat.
So what do you think, Colin? Do you think that we could get back quite a few different species here?
Well, of course, yeah, you can. What you've got is you've got an upper story and you've got middle story and you've got nothing on the ground. All weeds start on the ground. It's the ground that we don't look after.
Is the ground story an essential part of the whole equation, Colin?
It is the critically important thing. It's more important than the trees. It's more important than the middle story. The ground story, the ground flora is critical. You see, it's all about the soil. The problem with weeds is they change the chemical nature or the...
What happened to the nature of the soil, Colin?
Soil, in its original state, pre-settlement, was full of bacteria and fungus that all were interwoven.
And that would have been absorbing a bit of carbon, do you think?
Of course, once upon a time it was. I mean, it probably still absorbs some carbon, but it's not as effective as it should be. And because the soil is covered with weeds, the bacteria and the fungi and all the millions of microorganisms that should be in the soil that should be thriving can't because of weeds.
In an age of worsening climate change, we are failing the community by not recognising these things. Is that correct?
I guess yes, it is. But it's a big story. There's lots of chapters in this book. You know.
Colin, what could happen with this creek flat? How could it be transformed?
Creek flat like this should have juncus in it, should have lomandra, should have carex, and they should be thriving in here. So every now and then they get flooded, and then it's an ephemeral sort of riparian wetland area.
We have a big improvement in native wildlife with that sort of thing happening.
Much better. But not only from the obvious wildlife like birds, but insects. So if you improve your insect habitat, you improve your bird habitat. So I can't see any wrens here because there's very few native insects that they would feed on. Where are their native insects? Because it's all kikuyu. It's a monoculture. It's a monoculture of ground flora.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah. The longer you have a monoculture of a weed in a regional soil, the less likely you are to have healthy soil.
And that means the soil has a worse ability to sequester carbon.
And to regenerate all the other things that need to...
Soil is a living miracle. In one handful of soil, there are more organisms than there are humans on Earth. And we are only beginning to understand this vast network of beings right beneath our feet.
I know that some of that soil is original. Sure, the park behind it might be largely fill from the freeway, but some of this soil is original soil.
Fair, by the creek it generally would be.
Yeah, it would be. So if you take out all the trad and all the kikuyu and you plant into that things that should be there, it's quite possible that there will still be seed in that soil that can regenerate.
You've seen this happen. You've seen things come back to the brink on many occasions.
Yep.